pleasure to be here. It's not the first time I've talked about hemp in this hall. I've been here in 2008 and 9, and we were in the process of trying to establish a very large hemp processing facility in probably the Cobourg-Trenton corridor. And we failed at that point. We failed to get it done. It was a project that would have involved probably about $30 million of investment, would have handled 17,000 acres of hemp, and they would have been the highest CBD cultivars globally. So you can't even begin to imagine the value it would have brought to this area. And we failed. Politically we failed, bureaucratically we failed, and I just ran out of money. But I didn't give up. So I started in the hemp sector in 2000 roughly, and I was sequestered by Interior Ministry of Agriculture and Food. I used to work for them, and they needed somebody immediately to help evaluate fields from roughly Yonge Street to the Quebec border because of all the hemp that had come in. And that was Canada's first real flurry into the hemp sector in decades. And it was in about that first year, I turned them down 3 times, and finally I agreed to do it. For 1 year, I said. I'm still doing it. And I turned them down because I had a really bad attitude towards cannabis. Partly my generation, partly the way I was brought up. I was brought up as a pretty right-wing old Baptist. That year I was asked to test some material, and we'll come to that a little later. But we found some material that had been here since the War of 1812. You mentioned 1812. We'll touch on that just a bit because for me the story's getting a little old, but on the other side of it, we have material here that's nobody else in the world has had. That's why I said if we could have put this together in 2008 and 9, this would have been absolutely the epicenter for CBD globally. We failed. So, hemp is a greatly misunderstood crop. And the market is in chaos right now. And I mean chaos. And I'll have to see if I can figure this out. There we go. So the crop as a whole was grown for several purposes back in the early days. And it was really for rope and sailcloth and textiles. Even uniforms for military were made out of hemp. So it was a very important crop, and they even used it for making paper back then. There wasn't much they could make paper out of, so they used to use hemp for making paper. The other one, they used the oil for paints and lubricants. And those are still all valid areas that we could use hemp for. So paints, lubricants, wovens and non-woven textiles. I have a whole series of non-woven materials that I picked up in Germany, France, Sweden. They're sitting over on the table there. That's what we were trying to do in 2008 and failed. Okay, so recent use, and there's 3 things I'm looking at here. It's mainly an agricultural crop, and it was used to produce fiber. It's extremely lightweight, pound for pound stronger than steel. It's a green filler in all kinds of products. It's used in non-woven specialty papers. Not many people realize that a lot of cigarette paper is actually hemp. And most of that is made in France. There's a whole new area of supercapacitors. And I don't know much about this space, other than what they use for supercapacitors is a product called graphene. Hemp works better than graphene, and it's a fraction of the cost. The fellow who has the patents on this is at Potsdam University, I think it's Potsdam University, it's just across the border on the St. Lawrence. But all his work was done at Alberta Research Council. And green building materials. That's what I was just fascinated with green building. Secondly, was agricultural crop for superfoods. And I'll touch on this in a couple of minutes. But they're health foods, nutritional crops for man and animals. Essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. I mean, hemp is just a godsend if we could ever get our heads around this thing. It's unbelievable. And finally, and I've highlighted it, hemp is in recent, and I mean as of about a year and a half old, it's a low-risk source of plant-based cannabinoids, and they're non-psychoactive. So you're not going to get high on it. And that's why it's low risk. I mean, you just have to understand how Health Canada approach this. We're going to continue to let them do hemp because it's low risk. And that's why I said cannabis type of bud. So it's the bud material that Josh was talking about that comes from hemp. Okay. Less than 5 miles from here. It's a single plant, and he's standing at the base of the plant. And so that plant's at least 12 or 13 feet high. What's really amazing is where is that button for the, anyways, it has all those branches. And I want you to take a look at that. That's how the plant grows. But it is such a plastic plant. That's the same plant at high density. And it just will respond to whatever space it has, and it will do all. Now that is a plantation in the UK, and what they're doing is they're harvesting that with a harvester that cuts it in about 8 or 10 inch pieces, and those pieces are then left on the ground to dry, and they bale it up. And that's what they use for making all kinds of products. That's a windrow straw here was 5 miles. Dale Grant, that was on your field. Dale, where are you? There he is. You remember that, Dale? Yep, Dale tried way back in 2006, 7, 8. We tried to do this. It's a windrow straw. So, the straw is really a source of cellulosic material. And the bast fiber, we can go down through all this again. I don't want to spend a lot of time. The bast fiber is about 30%, and the hurd, if you think of hurd, it's a woody core material. And the woody core material, if you look at the chemistry of it, is not all that different than poplar trees. Chemistry. So, it's highly absorbent. It'll absorb 5 times its weight in water. It's great animal bedding. It's very lightweight. It's a great bulk filler. They use it for bulk plastics and biomasonry composites and bioenergy, cellulosic ethanol, and solid fuel. You can burn the stuff. Put it into pellets, burn it. That's a plant in France that was used for making insulation. There's horse bedding. That's the hurd material. That's not that stringy fiber. That's the hurd material. I'm not going to spend a long time. I'm just going to go through some of this stuff so you understand how diverse this plant really is in its application. That's pulp and paper. That's in France. Here's a door panel made with the stringy material mixed with polypropylene, and that's in a BMW. Those are real products. Mercedes, BMW, Volvo all have 18 kilos of hemp in the car. Pretty amazing. There's insulation going in, and that insulation is as good as or better than the pink insulation. You can take that material over there, rub all over yourself, and it doesn't make you itchy. Wonderful. There they mixed it with biomasonry composite, and they spray it on with a gunite machine, so they're building buildings so that over in England. Now, I'm not going to spend again a lot of time with this. I just want to get, because I know why you're here probably, is what is the scoop on CBD? So we're going to get there. Just follow through. So we know all about the cellulose content, the hemicellulose, lignin, and pectin. And I think if I was to help you focus on the fact that cellulose content of hemp is 70%. Over there on the far right side of that picture. And the hemicellulose is 22 and the lignin 6. And what's important about that is this. How much carbon how much carbon is laid down in a ton of hemp straw? Now, I started really looking at this the last month, and it sounds crazy, but here we are. The number is 440 kilos of carbon, or in every 1,000 kilos, or a ton of hemp straw. So just remember that, if you can. I'm going to go to the next slide. At 440 kilos, 0.44 tons of carbon. It took 1.6 tons of CO2 that the plant metabolized to get 1 ton of straw. So here's this plant growing, and it's growing out there in Hastings County, sucking out 1.6 tons of carbon dioxide to produce. And if you have 1 acre, it produces 7.5 tons per hectare, roughly 3 tons per acre. This is incredible. Let me tell you why. President Trump just announced a 1 trillion tree program to help offset carbon, right? Remember that? It's going to take 50 years for trees to get to the point where it'll do it. It's still the very best program you could ever do. It's better than any other mitigation program we know of, is plants growing. Hemp will do this immediately. In 100 days it'll do this. Not 50 years. 100 days. So if we can figure this out, if society can figure this out, we have a tremendous opportunity to help offset what we call global warming or climate change. And that's not by my research, that's by a group in Sweden. The second part, we talked about initially the stalks or the cellulose that we do with it. The second area I want to focus on with you today is the flowering heads. And the first is the seed. So if you're growing today, you can grow for the seed for reproductive purposes, or you grow pedigree seed, and it has to be either foundation, registered, or certified. You're not allowed to save your seed and regrow it. Health Canada's rules, and just the way it works in this whole industry. So you have to buy certified seed. There has to be a tag on the bag. And the second one you can do is you can grow it for grain. So you buy certified seed, you plant it, and if you do that, you can grow grain, and it's used for all kinds of food products. How many people use hemp hearts? Lots of people use hemp hearts. Or hemp seed oil. Or hemp protein powder for you ladies that make your shakes in the morning. Okay? That's the kind of stuff in hemp milk. And the other one that is really tragic is we know it would be a phenomenal product for animal health. It has all the omega-3s and the omega-6s, a complete set of proteins, and here we are, we haven't got any animal feeds that use this. And the second part of the flowering heads, or the inflorescence as we call it, or the buds, we were allowed to do and harvest this as of October 2018. Up until then, it was totally illegal. Couldn't do it. So the bud is really the material with no seed. And it's illegal to try to do this and sell it directly to the consumer if you're a farmer. You can't sell bud to people. You can grow the crop, but you can't do that. So you have to have the bud is saved and sold to extractors, and the extractors sell it to the LPs. Who knows what an LP is? It is?
Licensed producer.
A licensed producer. Name one.
Myself.
Name another one. You might know.
Abcam Medicinals.
Pardon?
Abcam.
Abcam. Canopy. Afria. Aurora, and there's 200 of them, I think, now. But that's the only place the farmer that grows this stuff can sell it. The bud leaf for extraction, he can sell it to an extractor who has only one option. He has to sell it to another extractor or an LP. They are the only gateway to the market. The only gateway. Now keep that in mind, because it's causing us enormous problems in the hemp industry right now.
To buy the grain seed, like I go down and buy alfalfa seed, oats and barley, but to grab this seed, I have to have a license for it?
Totally. So you have to go to the Health Canada website, and you have to go in, and it's a pain in the neck. It's horrible. It's worse than it ever has been. You have to go through, you have to do all this stuff, and you have to get a license to grow hemp. And when you get the license, you have to tell them what variety you're going to grow.
How do you know?
Well, there's a list
What
of
you're looking to do.
Just let me finish. There's a list of
Is
it.
it medicinal marijuana? Is it
No,
for
Hemp.
recreational medical? Is it CBDs?
It's hemp, he's talking.
Is it hemp?
If it's hemp, you have to get a hemp permit.
Well, it's
Okay.
both.
So it's
what's it cost you for that?
nothing. No, there's no cost.
You don't have to tell them what variety you're growing until the year you grow it, not when you get the license.
No, my most recent license is for 5 years.
Mine's for 2 years, and I didn't have to tell them what I was going to grow.
They usually ask you what you're going to grow. Now, what variety you're going to grow. And you are allowed to plant your crop, and you can tell them afterwards where it's been planted. You have, I think, 30 days now to do that. I've been doing this for 20 years. And the rules are always changing. So extraction, CBD for natural health products, we're just getting there. But it's always has to be extracted by either an extractor who has a specialized license or an extractor within an LP.
How much does that cost?
I don't know. Maybe somebody can answer that, but I don't know. I don't know if there's any cost to that. There probably is. And CBD for biopharmaceuticals. And I'll just mention the biggest biopharmaceutical I know of is GW in the UK. And they now have drugs that contain CBD and THC. And they do not use synthetics because they found natural works far quicker and far better. There's other cannabinoids, Joss mentioned them, CBC, CBG, CBN. We don't know which one will be the next big one. There's some talk about CBG. CBG is a precursor to both THC and CBD. It's quite unstable. There's enzymes that convert it very quickly. Okay, what's driving the hemp food market? Well, it's all about the quality of the food. It's an excellent source of protein. All the essential amino acids are there, and not many crops can say that. It has both omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids. It contains no gluten. It's a protein, has no trypsin inhibitors, has no phytic acid, it's non-GMO at this point, and it's very high in dietary fiber. There's a field of about a 200-acre field in Manitoba of a variety called Joey. It's a registered field. That will be for grain, not for grain production, but for registered seed. I bred that variety. What's driving the flower market? And this is where I hope we can take a bit more time. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time here, but
You've got plenty of time.
I got a bit of time, I hope. It's a need for alternative medication. We've lost the COX-2 inhibitors. We've lost a bunch of other really good pain medications that had complications. So we really need a new pain medication. A need for good anti-inflammatories. I mean, opioids do a pretty darn good job on pain. But we need something that's non-addictive to that extent. So we need some really good anti-inflammatories. We need to avoid THC in youth. It's a problem. I don't care what, you'll never convince me otherwise. It's a problem with THC in youth. It's a problem for their minds. We need to stop prescribing opioids. We need an affordable supply chain for CBD. We need a low-risk source because the volume that they're going to need in the future is going to be huge. And the need for a profitable farm crop. I mean, I don't know, if you're a farmer here, who wants some kind of a crop they can grow that can pay the bills? You know, like soybeans, pardon?
My brother's a pretty big cash cropper, and he had some people he knew out London way
Yep.
attempt at some hemp. And yeah, I've seen that combine. It's specialized. It isn't your flex head,
Oh.
your typical head.
Yep.
Because it's really hard on bearings. They burnt a couple up.
So, and the need for profitable farm crop and finally, medical science is driving this. Josh has showed a bit of stuff, and this has really got my attention a few years. It might be outdated now because I keep getting older too. But start looking at how much CBD does compared to all the rest of these things. It is a very profound blockbuster compound. When I worked for the biopharma, they would have called this a blockbuster drug. That's what it is, CBD is. And start looking at some analgesic, pain, and over here on your right. It's an analgesic, anti-epileptic, antipsychotic. It'll undo what THC is doing. So this is going to be really important as we go forward, and it's going to be hard for other compounds like CBG. Doesn't look at this point, it's antibacterial. We saw that came out just recently. But, I mean, they knew this back 5 or 6 years ago. So, and what other thing that got me really interested in this material was, it doesn't have one mechanism of action. Most drugs have one, possibly 2 mechanisms of action. CBD has 7 mechanisms of action. And this is really makes it, it means that we've got a lot to look forward to as they do development work. And you can't ignore this. THC, adolescent exposure increases the risk for schizophrenia. That's why we need to be really careful with youth. This was been given by Dr. Steve Lavioletti. He's down at the University of Western Ontario, and this kind of material came out of his talk at the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance. It dysregulates the dopamine system, where CBD normalizes the dopamine system. Go up one, sorry. CBD blocks the negative effects of THC. Third one down under THC, it turns on schizophrenia-related molecular pathways. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. It treats schizophrenia symptoms. So this, and I'm going to give this presentation to Louise, and she can maybe put it, you have a website? You can put it on there, I'm happy to do that. This is the kind of thing, and he's finding out, he's doing a lot of work, THC will make TD worse. And we got troops taking this stuff, they need to be taking CBD. All right, so, but, I hope you can see that. I don't know if I can do much with it. I'm going to go up to here. The bud material is this material here. We're not interested in these leaves at all. They don't do anything. And the reason is, this is the kind of, these little sparkly things you see looking. I call them little gems looking, but that's CBD. That's the CBD in this material. And that's what you want if you're growing this crop for CBD. So what does the field of cannabis look like? first slide I showed you, which is on your left, that's a field of industrial hemp in Sydney Township. And that is growing probably 9 to 12 feet high. As you get in that, we're on the edge, so it looks a little more profound. But it's very consistent. It's an amazing crop. It's a dioecious industrial hemp crop. Does anybody know what dioecious means?
Yeah.
What's it mean?
Well, it's got both male and female.
That's right, it's got both males and females. We also,
Giggity time, and that's what
Yeah.
happens.
what is marijuana?
Female.
Yes, it's just the female part of dioecious. I'm hoping this is bringing, so you understand. So this crop over here on the right is a crop I was visiting in Washington State. And they're staking every single plant. This is how intense it is. And they were staking every single plant. Every one's a female. The last thing they want is a male plant
Anywhere near there.
pollinating that, because it wrecks it puts seed into their buds and they don't want that. So, what are the issues? Industrial hemp's supposed to be low risk. That's why we can grow it in open fields. We don't care if the kids come in and steal a little bit, because they're never going to get high on it anyways. Right? In fact, probably the worst thing that will happen is they'll get a headache. So we don't care, and that's why Health Canada has deemed it low risk. But it can still have high levels of CBD. On the other side, marijuana is high risk. So you have to grow behind fences, you might get a permit for 4 plants, which is new, but it is a much more controlled because of the risk of people getting into it and having problems. Regulations limit THC on hemp to 0.3%. I put 15 cultivars on a list of approved cultivars. Every one is less than 0.3. I daren't go over. It won't get on there. And it's also on the OECD list of approved cultivars globally. Hemp bales don't produce CBD. So the male plants that are growing in a field of hemp, there is no CBD. I mean, if it is, it's almost immeasurable. Male plants are a problem at harvest. Any way you look at it, they're a pain in the neck. The buds are full of seed, and it's unwanted. Hemp is a pedigree seed, but it is a pedigree seed crop. So if you're going to grow this for seed, you need the males in there to produce the pollen to fertilize the females. Right? Making sense? Okay. But marijuana pollen renders pedigree seed crops non-compliant for a crop certificate. So if I have a neighbor next door that's growing marijuana, he should be growing it just females. But guess what?
A lot of people don't know.
A lot of
That
people-
looks funny like that.
They don't know.
Buddy, that's a male.
There's so many novices, and a lot of them are amateur marijuana breeders. They're looking for their little special plant. So there's marijuana pollen around, and it's a problem. Let's go over and look at marijuana. So it's a high risk for THC. There's no limit on the THC. If you can get 30%, I guess that's okay. I don't know. Some of that stuff out in BC is pretty hot, they tell me. And there's no limit on CBD. That previous slide, those are all females there on that right side. Buds with seed are essentially unmarketable. I don't know if that's fully true, but it's a problem. There's no such thing as pedigree seed in the marijuana industry. Did you know that the hemp industry has seed tags, we have crop certificates, we have sequence numbers, we have pedigrees like you can't imagine. The marijuana sector has none of them. None of it. Because it's mainly an asexually propagated plant. Cuttings, clones, those those kinds of things. So they're not cultivars. So remember that. Clones aren't cultivars. Marijuana pollen hemp pollen, if it blows onto a marijuana field, is a problem. So we had a 30-acre field of hemp being grown down south of London, Ontario, near Tillsonburg. And it was a beautiful crop coming along really good. And the biker gangs rolled in one night. This is the truth. Biker gangs rolled in one night and said to the farmer, if that hemp crop is not destroyed by the weekend, your kids aren't safe and your ginseng crop isn't safe. I've told Health Canada about this, and they've done nothing as to date. That's going on. So there's a problem between hemp and marijuana growing close by and in the same space.
You were saying that you don't want seeds in the hemp plant either, right?
Well, if you're growing it for CBD, but we don't care because we know how to separate seeds from flower
After the fact.
after the fact.
So hemp farmers anywhere near pot plants, that's a problem.
No, we're not having any problems yet, but that's coming.
Just from pollen,
Yeah.
that's a problem, right?
How far apart would they have to be?
15 miles.
5 miles.
5 miles?
That's what, if I'm growing a pedigree seed crop, I'll say variety X here, and I want to grow a pedigree seed crop of variety Y over here, I gotta be 5 miles apart. Otherwise, the pollen could cross-contaminate.
15 miles.
Yeah, especially if it's monoecious and dioecious. So there's on your right is a female inflorescence. I'm going to walk up here, I'm sorry. I have a pointer in my pocket. You see all of this beautiful sparkly stuff? That's all CBD looking at you. It's all on the outside of the plant. It's not inside, on the outside. If you rub it, it'll come off. If you put it over a machine, it'll wipe it off. It gets stuck on the male plants if the male plants are in the same population going through any machinery. So CBD is wonderful. It's on the outside. It's easy to extract, but it's hard to capture. That's a male inflorescence, and you can see all the little pollen sacs hanging there. And not many people understand all this yet. It's misunderstood. This whole crop is totally misunderstood. Misunderstood. I'm sorry. I just got the word to put my mic up.
That could be a big problem though.
It is a problem.
People come in at night and they scrape it off.
They need to get quite a bit of plant material to do that. Yeah. There's a young planting. Half the plants are males and half are females. That's actually growing on Louise's place. You probably know the house across the road. We just have, they're just tiny plots the size of this room, but that's what I need to have for plant breeding. That's a variety called Georgina, and that is a hemp field in Kentucky. And they took it right through close to harvest, and they've gone through and they've removed all the males. So you won't see any males in there. No male plants. There's a field near Brighton, Ontario. And that's a breeder plot. It's a variety called Martha. And it runs about, Martha runs about 5% CBD.
Those yellow plumes are the males?
The darker yellow plumes are the males, and this is very early on. It's just starting. The females will continue to grow up through there, but at the end you won't hardly see the males. Those females will grow another 2 feet. There's a field, not any more than 5 miles from here. 7-acre field of hemp. This gentleman grew 20 acres last year. And he's harvested. You see the stalks are this high. So we have figured out how to mechanically harvest this. We just take off the tops. I can't show you all that information tonight. It's just not enough time. And I don't want to give all the secrets.
How much money would you make off 7 acres?
I'll get to that.
Oh,
Okay, we're going to come to that. How about that? Let's read the questions right on the money. So why is agriculture attracted to flower production? Why are they interested in flower production versus growing it for seed or growing it for fiber? So fiber, if you get 3 tons per acre, and that's 7.5 tons per hectare. You might sell the straw. Now, I think the straw is actually worth a couple $100 a ton now. It's gone up since 2010. But even if it was $200, that's $600 an acre. The grain price, 800 pounds per acre. You know, I don't know guys that say they get 1,200, but I also know guys that get 500. So I think 800 is a pretty reasonable grain yield. $640 gross per acre. That take all your costs off that. Flour production, you can get 700 pounds per acre of flour. I've seen any yields from 500 to 1,000 pounds. So you get quite a range, but what a difference. You can sell this for $4,200. And there's also people out there, and we're saying $6 a pound for flour. Everybody says, oh, that's way too low. That's way too low. You can get $20 a pound. There's all kinds of prices out there, but I'm telling you, this is the most realistic costs I know of. And even that, right now, is probably iffy, given what's going on in the industry. There's a lot of extra costs to develop. You need to develop a really, really good budget. Don't jump into this right now unless you have a really good budget. There are added risks, there's weather, there's labor. Not all flour is equal. You have to have the right cultivars. Is there seed of those cultivars? You need to walk before you enter with your eyes wide open, because this is not a cakewalk and there's all kinds of pitfalls. Marketing problems. And this is probably the most important 3 or 4 slides I'm going to show you. The marijuana licensed producers, the LPs, they've been given an exclusive monopoly by Health Canada to market CBD. And why Health Canada did that, I don't know to this day. Unless there must have had been a lot of political pressure and a lot of backroom deals going on. But they're the only people that can market it. So if you grow it, you only have one option. You have to sell it to the LPs. It has to go through there. It's their gateway. Only the LPs are contract to purchase hemp flower or handle the CBD extracts. Farmers can grow, harvest hemp flower, but they can't extract and they can't sell CBD. You can apply for what they call a small use license. The hemp industry is in trouble in Canada because of this monopoly that Health Canada gave the LPs. And I don't know what to tell you. I've been the most positive hemp, I'm going to call it hemp evangelist probably anywhere. But I'm telling you, I had more trouble putting down my thoughts for this presentation. It's the first time I feel so concerned that we may have the same failure all over again if we don't get this cleaned up. So as the LPs go, so does the hemp. Where are the LPs today? They're all in huge trouble. They're in terrible trouble. And so the hemp is maybe facing the same problem. Okay, so the thing is, everything has to go through the LPs. Well, there's other issues at stake here. And the problems are the problem of illegal hemp plantings. All across Canada, there's illegal hemp. They say that 60% of the hemp acres planted last year was illegal. 60%. We've got probably about 150,000 acres. 60% of it was illegal, was not compliant with Health Canada regulations. People are planting clones. It's illegal. So if somebody tries to get you to buy clones and plant clones, it's illegal. They're planting feminized seed. It's illegal. So that when you put your seed in the seed wheel and plant it, every plant that comes up is a female. You know what they're charging? They're charging $1,500 to $3,000 a pound for feminized seed. Do you know what regular hemp seed sells for? $5 a pound. So there's a lot of shysters out there playing with this right now. So be really careful if that's something you're interested in. Be really careful. The planting of F1 hybrids. So that's when you're taking a clone and you cross it to a hemp variety and you get an F1 hybrid. There's not any, none of this stuff is on the list of approved cultivars. Doesn't qualify. And then using marijuana material illegally and substituting marijuana materials for. So I ran across an incident, I'll push it that way, where the company was saying, I have Joey flower for sale. Joey is a cultivar. Joey's a cultivar I bred, put in that total. And the flower, he says, is 8% CBD. And I said, really? He says, yeah. I says, it's not Joey. He said, oh yes it is. So I said, no it's not. I read it. It's not. It's only 2% or less. So all this illegal activity is going on, and it's going to harm the industry if Health Canada does not clean this up. And then there's problems of traceability and enforcement. So they're trading in materials with no records, absolutely no records. The farmer has to have complete traceability right to the point of selling it, and that extractors and the LPs are bringing the material into their facilities with no traceability. They don't care. So they're bringing all this illegal material in, illegally. And I know one warehouse that was full that was destroyed because of it. There's no regulatory enforcement. So low-risk hemp is all of a sudden high-risk hemp. And if we don't get this cleaned up, we got a huge problem. And I know there's other hemp people in this room that know that. Other issues. Poor to bad harvest methods result in low-grade CBD flower full of mold and bacteria. All kinds. I could go on for hours on this. Importation of suspicious material from the U.S. They're unapproved cultivars, imported as biomass, and then they switched over and sell it to an LP. It's just illegal activity after illegal activity. This never happened under the old system. It's all happened since that new Cannabis Act came into play. A year and a half ago. I never would have believed that farmers would have done this, but that's who's behind a lot of this. The illegal purchasing, and they're leaving that legal material behind. Consumers continue to pay full price, and the legal farmers are hurt. It appears that I'm going to say this right flat out. It appears that the marijuana sector is literally in the process of hijacking the hemp industry. And their purpose is to buy material at 1/1000th the cost. They can grow it themselves. We should be concerned about that. Oh, did I turn that off? Can you turn on that? Push the button.
Matt?
There we go. Good. Good. Somebody knows what he's talking about. I'm doing it.
Take it to make it.
Okay, so I just put a schematic together, took some time, I said, I want to just have in my head understand what's going on. Understand what's going on here. So there's really only one group of legal producers, and they're blocked now from getting this material into the marketplace. And there's blockades and exploitation and control over the legal hemp market, because the LPs want control of this $30 billion global CBD market. It's emerging, like state 2030. That's what they want. They want to make sure they control it. And all this other activity is going on. Why? No one's watching. I've communicated with Health Canada on this. I have letters, 2 or 3 letters into them. Haven't got any satisfaction back yet at all.
John, when we buy CBD oil on the reserve here, do they bypass the system?
Yeah, right.
I have no idea where that stuff came from. I have absolutely no idea. Some of it may be good, some of it may be soybean oil. I mean, I just don't know. I used to work in the evening primrose oil market for years.
See,
When I went out and evaluated in the early days of the evening primrose, half the product on the shelf was just soybean oil.
seemed to work for me.
Yeah, so there's
Placebo effect.
we're talking fraud at all levels
Yeah.
going on. So I don't know, Josh, you got any indication where they're getting stuff from?
They're usually growing it themselves, but there's no regulations in the rest of the industry, so they don't have to check for pesticides. They don't have to check for
They
everything
don't
else.
grow hemp.
No, they're taking it from the marijuana strains. Yeah,
They don't grow it.
yeah, they're not growing
I
hemp.
don't think they're growing it. I don't think they're growing in Six Nations, Tyndonega,
No, it's all
Akwesasne,
no.
Walpole Island. They're not growing this stuff.
They're going for the
They've got
marijuana.
Charlotte's Web, which is less than 1% THC.
So, yeah, so list of approved cultivars. If you're going to think of growing hemp, and you've had the caution now, but if you're going to grow it, there's grain type cultivars over here on your left. Those are all Anka, Alyssa, Kanda, Kanma, Canola. Those are all, they're not just ones I've bred, but a whole bunch of different people. There's 30 cultivars that Canadian breeders put on the list of approved cultivars. 30 that Canadian breeders put on. I put 15 of them on there. So I know most of the stuff. I've tested it in plots. It's all less than 2% CBD. Some of it's monoecious, some of it's dioecious. Some of it phenols from Finland, for example. Judah is out of the University of Guelph program that they canned years ago. Fiber types. So if you're looking for CBD, the first thing to do is go find fiber dioecious material. And there's a variety called Carmen, there's one Carmenola, and I don't have a lot, but you can hear Georgina's 3.5 to 4.5, Martha's 4.5, 5.5, Victoria's 4 to 5. It takes me about 4 years of breeding to raise the CBD 0.5%. I have material in my breeding program that's less than 0.3, and it's now over 8, but I have to stabilize it. And that's the hard part, to get it stabilized. And I'm trying not to use any genetic modification of any sorts. I don't use any way to snip in or snip out material in any way, shape, or form. And all the other traditional hemp breeders are doing the same. The marijuana sector is different. So, low levels of European cultivars. Here's Alyssa, Anka, Patera. Those are all came in from Europe in the early days, like 2000. You can see at seed set and seed harvest, virtually there's little to no CBD. They're all low THC, by the way. Here's some Upper Canada strains. That's the material I found still growing here. I found 25 sites between Lake Simcoe and Brockville back in the early days, the early 2000s. And you can start to see, this is 2008. Look at the levels. I was getting 4, 4.5, 4%. So Victoria, Georgina, and UCRGM are all on the list of approved cultivars. I don't try to market UCRGM. It's getting a little old and stale. And then I said, wonder what's happening in Europe. Wonder if Europe has any really good varieties that we could bring over and maybe they would compete with my material. So here's Fedora, a bunch of stuff out of Europe. And this isn't my data, this is European data. And it's still 2%. And I remember there was, yes?
I bought in Holland CBD from the health food store,
Yes.
5%.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so let me explain how they do that.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the plant. It's after it's been extracted. So there are in Holland a number of very innovative farmers, and they have equipment now to harvest, and they haul this stuff to, and Doak is a big extractor up in Denmark. And there's other extractors there also in probably Holland. And they'll take stuff as low as 2% here, and by the time it goes into the processing plant, it's down to 0.8%. Because of just all with the machinery, all with the equipment, it's wiped onto all sorts. If you look inside the combine that's harvested hemp for grain even, it's black. That's all CBD that's been wiped inside the combine. It's a black, sticky substance. Anyways, they get 0.8 and they still put it through the extraction process. And they concentrate it. So let's take my 4%. We'll use that as a given. My 4% variety, if we put it through an extraction process, it's about a 10-fold concentration. You end up with a 40% extract, and the THC in the extract goes from, let's say it's 0.2 to 2%.
They're allowed selling the CBD at all health food stores and drugstores.
Yeah. And then they take the extract and they dilute it with soybean oil or canola oil or medium trade triglyceride or whatever to get to a concentration to market to consumers. Okay, so I'm getting near the end here, so bear with me. Land selection, if you're going to grow hemp, should be a well-drained sand alone. Variety, depends if you're going to grow for oil seed, you're going to grow it for CBD, you're going to grow it for fiber. Your planting method, you could do solid stem, 7-inch rows with a grain drill, or you could put it into 36-inch rows, 1-meter rows with a corn planter with specialty plates. Weed control, chemical, there are no chemicals. There are 96 pesticides Health Canada tests for. We talked about that. 96 pesticides. Pesticide test alone is $1,500 per lot. What if you do a lot and something showed up? You have to throw it away. So you better be careful how big your lot is. We can't spend time tonight. So, where was I? Weed chemical or manual. So we've got in our CBD production system, we grow it in 3-foot rows. We use cultivators. We do send hoers in. I put a $sign, that's labor. That costs $1,000 an acre. That's why they use manure. You didn't. If you have to control the males, well, you can grow it's illegal, but for those who use feminized seed, you'll probably spend $7,000 an acre to buy feminized seed at 5 pounds per acre. 5 times 15, something like that. Or you can spend $1,000 in labor and have the people walk through before harvest and just cut off the male plants. That works too. Machine or manual, some people still harvest by hand. In Kentucky, there's thousands of acres, but they have lots of Mexicans. They don't have many Mexicans. And nothing wrong with that. They're good people, and they're hard workers, and they really do an amazing job. Up here, we got to think about how to do this mechanically. Drying systems. Batch systems would be something like a tobacco dryer, and there's people playing around with continuous dryers. There's a field, a commercial CBD field in Ontario. It's part of a 100-acre field. And what's really interesting is you see how tall it is here, and all of a sudden it drops. And then it goes across the other and comes up again. The farmer had decided he was going to build a topper. And he went through and he topped that. And I rode with him. It was a high boy machine. He walked through the field back and came back. And he drove it up to the field. And I said, "What are you stopping for? We should keep going." He says, "I can't do it. I can't take all those tops off. I just can't do it." And the funny part was, he got more crop out of the topped area because every lateral came up beautiful. And I think it did something to trigger some stress in the plant, and the CBD level was about 1.5% higher. Wow, that might be a good learning curve. Upper Canada hemp, you covered that, Josh. I don't know what to say other than I want to tell you a couple of stories. It was the first subsidized crop in all of Canada. We know the genetics that we're working with here, the Upper Canada stuff, came from Russia. They were playing in 1801, due to the value conversion. I had a historian do this. They could pay roughly $17,000 an acre, what they're paying for fiber. That stuff over there. Battle of Amherstburg, they lost all the stores, they burned the rope walks, and they burned all the ships up the Thames River to London. There was a Battle of York, there was hundreds of people died in the Battle of York. Hundreds of Americans and Canadians died, or British then. York is Toronto. Our kids aren't even learning this in school. The Battle of York was almost entirely about hemp. The Americans thought if they could clean out the hemp stores, and they could paralyze the British on the Great Lakes. Interesting. And the British were so angry they went down and tried to burn the White House and other stuff in Washington. But they left behind heritage hemp genetics. When they brought all this stuff over, they left it. And the map of Ontario was different in how they carved it up. We lived in the Midland District. And it went from roughly Trenton to Brockville. And that's where I found, I can't find them hardly anymore, some of this feral material, wild hemp that was from the War of 1812. And there were a whole bunch of hemp processing machines sent in, and we know they went to these different locations. So the Upper Canada Hemp Genetics provided a unique platform for unique non-GMO CBD production, I guess. Thank you.